Nullius in Verba is the sign-off we often use here at Apocalypsis Historia.
Nullius in Verba. Nullius in Verba.
And in a way to try to encapsulate our research method as being due diligent and honest and skeptical in the pursuit of resources and understanding. Nullius in Verba, from the Latin, on the word of no one, to be paraphrased of something like, don't take anyone else's word for it. And it was something that I jacked from the Royal Society in an attempt to make something pithy and cool sounding to use for the channel. And since this YouTube channel is the convergence of history, literature, and conspiracy, I seem to have found the perfect novel, or rather, maybe it found me, the perfect novel for communicating this idea of Nullius in Verba, and that's going to be Thomas Pynchon's The Crying of Lot 49. But it's weirder than that, because not only will I highlight the main character Oedipa's thoroughness in her research and how it relates to Shakespeare specifically, but that she is literally researching occult history through Jacobean plays. Before we properly grab our shovels for these rabbit holes, I would implore you that you check out our Patreon to help support our work or gain exclusive benefits by choosing a paid tier. Thank you so much. Words. The novel is steeped in paranoia, absurdity, and some of the best prose you'll ever come across. Really, this is impressive for a 29-year-old released in 1966. Aside from gushing over its deserved literary merits, I was struck by its plot relevance to the Apocalypsis Historia niche. I didn't read it until mid-2023, after starting the channel and becoming acquainted with the more obscure Elizabethan Jacobean playwright names like Thomas Dekker, John Ford, and John Webster, so it was astounding to see some of those very playwrights being invoked as a plot element in the novel. To sum up the novel, the protagonist, Oedipa, is made executor to the will of a powerful California mogul, which leads her on a quest of investigating housing developments, ex-Nazi doctors, and searching for discrepancies in different folio text versions of Jacobean dramatic plays to uncover secrets of the past. If this isn't exactly the same seemingly disparate smorgasbord of ideas that I batter around on this channel with chance, then call us schizoid. The novel itself revolves around strange coincidences of Oedipa becoming familiar with the secret society of Turn and Tax's mail system and their logo, a muted bugle horn, and seeing its presence everywhere she looks. She'll see it as children's chalk art on the sidewalk or scribbled in a dingy bathroom stall. It is through these coincidences, or synchronicities to say Carl Jung about it, it is through these synchronicities that Oedipa learns about the Jacobean play, The Courier's Tragedy, by a one Richard Warfinger, which becomes a major plot element for the rest of the novel. Oedipa goes to see the play, and after viewing an albeit spectacular, convoluted, and bloody performance, a particular word, Trystero, bores its way into Oedipa's head and prompts her to speak with the director after the show for more information. As she talks to the director, quote, his eyes were black, surrounded by an incredible network of lines, like a laboratory maze for studying intelligence and tears. They seemed to know what she wanted, even if she didn't. You came to talk about the play, he said. The director, Ralph Driblette, is somewhat annoyed from the get-go at Oedipa's questions, and he says that there's no point in looking into this, it's merely just to entertain people. And it's either a hesitancy, or maybe it's his own paranoia, or it's his belief that there is nothing more to literally look into. And we'll see what Pynchon has to say. Quote, it isn't literature, it doesn't mean anything. Warfinger was no Shakespeare. Who was he, she said. Who was Shakespeare? It was a long time ago. And although it's just a throwaway joke, the who was Shakespeare, oh, it was a long time ago, as if Driblette is thinking Oedipa is talking about Shakespeare and not Warfinger here. And yeah, it's a little throwaway joke, but here at the Apocalypsis Historia channel, where we like to entertain some Shakespeare authorship stuff, maybe this is a little double meaning here in the sense that, who was Shakespeare, right? But we'll leave that rabbit hole for another pot of coffee. From here, Oedipa asks to see the script of the play, asking about the stage directions, and whether they were original or later additions. She will also inquire where Driblette got his copy, and he becomes exasperated by her insistency. Why, Driblette said at last, is everybody so interested in text? Hats off again to Pynchon here, because isn't that exactly what I'm doing here with this text? Is this novel just for entertainment? Or did I find something more, the author's hidden secret agenda? Or maybe it's just some Matrix glitch residue. Driblette accuses Oedipa of getting all, quote, Puritan about it, quote, so hung up with words, that instead of finding the meaning in the text, it's actually in the realization and interpretation of it. To Driblette, with such power bestowed upon the interpreter of the text, it's not only how dare, but also why bother with stripping away the text's multiplicity. Author's original intent be damned. Quote, that's what I'm for, to give the spirit flesh. The words, who cares? The rote noises to hold the line bashes with, to get past the bone barriers around an actor's memory, right? But the reality is in this head, mine. I'm the projector at the planetarium. All the closed little universe visible in the circle of that stage is coming out of my mouth, eyes, and sometimes other orifices too. Driblette insists to Oedipa that she could put together some clues, develop a thesis or several about why the play is what it is or means, that she would waste her life that way and never touch the truth. Oedipa won't settle for this answer and proceeds on her journey, knowing that Driblette does know more about the text than he cares to admit. And I think when you become obsessed with the subject, you can relate to how Oedipa feels here as she dives into this mystery, when, quote, revelations come crowding in exponentially, as if the more she collected, the more came to her, until everything she saw, smelled, dreamed, remembered, would somehow come to be woven in to the Trystero, or the grand conspiracy, or the hyperobject. Oedipa is eventually going to want to read the text for herself, Nullius and Verba, in action, and thus she gets her hands on a copy of Jacobean Tragedy Plays. This begins her hunt for the word Trystero, and her efforts sound very familiar to the playbook Chance and I use around here, including trekking down to the old university library to obtain ILL loans. I feel as it's like exactly what I was just doing with the weird video, looking at a bunch of different copies to see why they changed one word from the other. Quote, Oedipa turned immediately to the single mention of the word Trystero, opposite the line she read in pencil, CF variant 1687 edition, put there by maybe some student. In a way, it cheered her. Another reading of that line might help light further the dark face of the word. According to her short preface, the text had been taken from a folio edition, undated. Oddly, the preface was unsigned. She checked the copyright page and found the original hardcover had been a textbook, Plays of Ford, Webster, Turner, and Warfinger, published by the Lectern Press, Berkeley, California, back in 1957. She called the LA Library. They checked, but didn't have the hardcover. They could look it up on the interlibrary loan for her. Wait, she said, having just got an idea. The publisher's up in Berkeley. Maybe I'll try them directly. And so here we're actually going to get our mentions of John Ford and John Webster. And funny enough, Chance was the one who had told me about this novel like years ago, and all he had said was, or at least all I can remember of him saying, is that it had a conspiracy involving the mail or something, and he's looked it up and it had something to do with some Rothschild banking stuff as well, and I thought that was pretty interesting. So I didn't get around to it until years later, after we'd already started the tube and I was already starting to get familiar, and I had just gotten the "'Tis a Pity She's a Whore," and I was going to start reading that, and, decided to go dive into this first because, it was short. I had just picked up Lot 49. I was like, oh, I thought that'd be, a quick, easy read. And I started going through it, and I was like, Chance, do you remember all this stuff in here? And so, yeah, I thought it was very interesting that just as I had learned some of these names, that they become plot elements in the book that I'm reading. And it's, once again, that's a phenomenon of synchronicity that I'm experiencing in a book that's also heavily about synchronicity. What are the chances? And yeah, forever Chance has been shouting from the rooftops about Duchess of Malfi, and has come up with this, excellent parallel passage comparison of this phrase of engendering of toads. And here we go. Once again, yeah, Pynchon is like talking all about this deep cut Jacobean tragedy stuff. And unless you're like really inundated with the literature, even like particular scene essentially, right? Not even everyone interested in literature is even going to know some of these people. So I think it's pretty interesting that here we're going to get, some of that Apocalypsis Historia niche vibe sort of coming out here in a sense. But, it's not just that. It's like Sure, they're talking about Jacobean tragedies, but we're going to get some Carl Jung in here. We're going to get some Nazi doctors as well. Like, it's like everything we like around here, okay? Subscribe. Continuing the dig into Warfinger's knowledge on Trystero, Oedip obtains a copy of Plays of Ford, Webster, Turner, and Warfinger, and, quote, skimmed through to find the line that had brought her all the way up here, and in the leaf-fractured sunlight froze. No hallowed skein of stars can ward, I trow, ran the couplet, who once had crossed the lusts of Angela. No, she protested aloud, who's once been set his tryst with Trystero. The penciled note in the paperback had mentioned a variant, but the paperback was supposed to be a straight reprint of the book she now held. Puzzled, she saw that this edition also had a footnote. According to the only quarto edition, 1687, the earlier folio has a lead inserted where the closing line should have been. D'Amico has suggested that Warfinger may have made a libelous comparison involving someone at court, and that the later restoration was actually the work of the printer, Inigo Barstable. All these have these bizarre names in this book, but get used to that. The doubtful Whitechapel version has this tryst or odious awry, O Nicolo, which besides bringing in quite graceless Alexandrine, is difficult to make sense of syntactically, unless we accept the rather unorthodox, though persuasive arguments of J.K. Sale that the line is really a pun on this Trystero dies irae. This, however, it must be pointed out, leaves the line nearly as corrupt as before, owing to no clear meaning for the word Trystero, unless it is to be pseudo-Italianate variant on Trista, equal wretched, depraved. But the Whitechapel edition, besides being a fragment, abounds in such corrupt and probably spurious lines, as we have mentioned elsewhere, and is hardly to be trusted. Then where, Oedipa wondered, does the paperback I bought at Zapp's get off with its Trystero line? Was there yet another edition, besides the quarto, folio, and Whitechapel fragment? The editor's preface, signed this time by one Emery Bortz, professor at English at Cal, mentioned none. She spent nearly an hour more searching through all the footnotes, finding nothing. Damn it, she yelled. So sorry for the giant text info dump there, essentially, about what's going on in the story, but it's just talking about, how she's got all these different editions open and comparing them all and wondering about what agency is the printer changing this stuff, why is this writer or why is this compiler doing this in a sense, what's their reasoning for changing these lines, and what's the original line. And in doing so, she's really just trying to seek the purest answer on no one's word indeed. And I'm also going to share just another little apocalypsis hallmark around here, because in my early videos, I talked a lot about the Dulles family. I went to a school where most of my teachers actually taught at an older school, which was called John Foster Dulles High School, and actually Chance had actually taught at the middle school for like a year or two. And they've always just been a big fascination of mine, from the CIA overthrows in the Third World or to more salacious, scandalous stuff like MK Ultra. I just find it all the more pertinent once again to the Apocalypsis Historia branding, if I could ever pitch it in that sense of what if I could pitch what this channel's about. It's like, read this book. This has got everything in it. But Edo was going to actually reference John Foster Dulles here, Dulles, as he's been called. And Oedipa is going to have this reflective moment here, thinking about Foster Dulles and Senator McCarthy having an effect on her psyche, prior to her, moment in time now. And that sort of cultural background has sort of shaped the person that she is today, in a sense. And that, quote, they had managed to turn the young Oedipa into a rare creature indeed, unfit perhaps for marches and sit-ins, but just a whiz at pursuing strange words in Jacobean texts. Ouch, that hits a little too close to home. Shaped by Foster Dulles and only good at analyzing Jacobean texts. Isn't that like exactly what we do here? Literally affected by the exact same people. So towards the end of the novel, Driblette has apparently offed himself, and Oedipa is trying to follow up a bunch of clues until she meets with that professor previously mentioned, Emery Bortz, and a bunch of students that are sitting around drinking and having a wake for Driblette. Quote, Oedipa located a full one, a beer, and seated herself on the grass. I would like to find out, she presently plunged, something about the historical Warfinger, not so much the verbal one. The historical Shakespeare, growled one of the grad students through a full beard, uncapping another bottle. The historical Marx, the historical Jesus. He's right, shrugged Bortz. They're dead. What's left? Words. Pick some words, said Bort. Them we can talk about. No hollowed skein of stars can ward, I trow, quoted Oedipa, who's once been set his tryst with Trystero. Courier's Tragedy, Act 4, Scene 8. Once again, I feel like we're introduced another little double potential meaning here with the historical Shakespeare questioning in a sense, right? Not outwardly, but maybe if you read between the lines hard enough and get a good squint in it, maybe you can kind of see it there, maybe. Questioning Shakespeare's side. Oedipa will get some answers from the professor, Emery Bort, who has some scholarly knowledge on the subject of the Courier's Tragedy, including showing her a pornographic version of the play stolen out of the Vatican. From here on out, Oedipa will spend the next several days in and out of libraries in earnest discussions with Emery Bort and Genghis Cohen, poring over sources and comparing passages from obscure philatelic journals and ambiguous footnotes in old pamphlets to fit together an account of the mysterious mailing system. Dark Angels. Quick tangent, and I wasn't ever really sure how to fit this piece into this essay, but Dark Angels and Angel of Death are invoked several times in the prose as being shadowy forces, reminding me of the Robert Fagel's Orestia translation I have of the word daemon to mean the same meaning, dark angel. The second to last sentence describes the crier, the person announcing the auction, looking like a priest of some remote culture, perhaps to a descending angel. Descending, aka fallen angel? I'm not sure, but it doesn't have to necessarily be. But another possibly connected sentence is when Oedipa recklessly drives around at night with no headlights in an attempt to harm herself, but nothing happens because, quote, angels were watching. Watchers are a particular class of angel that appear in both the Book of Daniel and the esoteric Book of Enoch, and were associated with guiding and then later leading astray mankind from God. Some of the Watchers were some of the fallen angels that fell with Satan. Some of these fallen angels in the lore were the ones to teach mankind secrets of the earth and crafting methods, from cosmetics to agriculture. This includes writing and reading. So once again, this might be fun meta-level commentary on daimonic forces outside of the text's 2D perspective. Us using angelic technology to orchestrate events. God and the Word, with a capital W, are also repeated very often, as I've already quoted up before. So we're getting more layered metaphors on communication, for God is the Word, the Logos. Logos is word, discourse, logic, reason, and order. So is Crying of Lot 49 a book of words, or logos, employing discourse, or logos, on logos itself? Quote, searching ceaseless among the dial's 10 million possibilities for that magical other who would reveal herself out of the roar of relays, monotone litanies of insult, filth, fantasy, love, whose brute repetition must someday call into being the trigger for the unnameable act, the recognition, the word. Professor Emery Bort will also liken literary critics to Puritans for them being so obsessed with words. Maybe the motto at the top, the Nullius in Verba on the word of no one, is even more applicable here than I thought. Madness as revelation. There's a lot of plot details I'm leaving out so as not to completely spoil it, although it's a rather short novel, but I just wanted to emphasize this obsession that Oedipa has in her quest for answers, as it's something I can viscerally relate to myself. If anything, I think the novel is also making comment on the reflectiveness of obsession, perhaps highlighted in the name of the fictional city the novel takes place in, San Narciso, from Narcissus, the Greek myth of the man who fell in love with his own reflection. Perhaps madness is seeing your own reflection everywhere, for isn't that schizophrenia? Interpreting everything as being connected in some profound or personal way? Reminds me of the Arabic word Majnun that I had just picked up from Cyclonopedia by Reza Nagaristani, which I've talked about multiple times on the channel. I'm at the recording of this video, I'm still slowly working through it. Yeah, and this book makes House of Leaves look like nursery rhyme. Quoting from Cyclonopedia, a Majnun, a man laid open by Jnun, and at the same time, a Majnun man, a madman, who immediately reminds us of the melancholic tale of Layli and Majnun, their love story which converges in madness, openness, and a delirious love, the forbidden. And as I said at the beginning of the video, to Oedipus it seems like the more she understands about the waste system and finds about turn and taxis and Trystero, that more of these synchronistic coincidences starts to occur, and she starts experiencing in her mundane life the transcendent other, as she often says herself, for the seemingly unobtainable truth to the mystery seems to be taunting her, as characters in the novel will float in and out of scene, all somehow perfectly placed at the right time for Oedipa to find them in relevancy to her journey. She'll even attempt to lose herself and wander the street. In doing so, she'll see an elderly sailor she stumbles across under a highway has the wasted muted bugle horn symbol tattooed on his hand. Eavesdropping on a game of poker at an airport, she notices the players' pocketbooks all contain the same symbol. An old man's inheritance is an old signet ring with the symbol on it. A girl on the bus in front of her traces the symbol on a window with her exhalation as the paint. Quote, she looked around, spooked at the sunlight pouring in all the windows, as if she'd been trapped at the center of some intricate crystal, and said, "My God." It was enough, a coded warning. What, tonight, was chance? Oedipa is rightly questioning her sanity as the cascading coincidences and circumstances barrel down on her from seemingly all directions. In regard to novel themselves, we know that they are somewhat contrived, for isn't that what a writer does? Like an omnipotent god controlling fate by stringing sentences together to weave a destiny of the mortal, the character. The author then determines everything that can and will happen to the character. Literally, Oedipa's own paranoia is an authorial invention. She does not feel anything without the author putting it in her mind, putting the circumstances in front of her. I'd like to refer to Sidney calling the poet also in Greek poesis, poen, the maker. So therefore, Oedipa's paranoia is justified. From her 2D perspective as a character, a god might as well be maneuvering her every move. Synchronicity is to synchronicity, a deliberate pattern only witnessed by the mad. Quote, or you are hallucinating it, or a plot has been mounted against you, so expensive and elaborate, involving items like the forging of stamps and ancient books, constant surveillance of your movements, planting of post-horn images all over San Francisco, bribing of librarians, hiring of professional actors and Pierce, and Variety only knows what all besides, all financed out of the estate in a way either too secret or too involved for your non-legal mind to know about, even though you are a co-executor, so labyrinthian that it must have meaning beyond just a practical joke. Or you are fantasizing some such plot, in which case you are a nut, Oedipa, out of your skull. Is there some feedback mechanic between one consciousness and the rest? Can our consciousness cause other parts of the collective unconsciousness to become gravitationally attracted to it? Or is it the world confirming the academic suspicion that you see what you want to see, and all is as it should seem? Perhaps I'm going a little too hard in the paint here, that I should heed the critics' chastise of believing that there is something more in the text. But what's the fun in that? Quote, Oedipus says, I am meant to remember. Each clue that comes is supposed to have its own clarity, its fine chances for permanence. But then she wondered if the gem-like clues were only some kind of compensation to make up for her having lost the direct epileptic word, the cry that might abolish the night. I know we sort of got derailed here. We started off with, look, Oedipa does this thorough research, to now words and metaphors are recapitulating aspects of reality itself, revealed only by the mad poets. The mad recognize the world as mad, and to ignore it would be even more so. Quote, cherish it, cried Hilarius, fiercely. What else do any of you have? Hold it tightly by its little tentacle. Don't let the Freudians coax it away, or the pharmacists poison it out of you. Whatever it is, hold it dear. For when you lose it, you go over by that much to the others. You begin to cease to be. I also have an excerpt I'm going to show you from an old Reddit post I found, and it was someone who found an old Playboy magazine that featured a story about Thomas Pynchon, and I have a little highlighted section that's all about the surreal synchronicity coincidences that were happening in Pynchon when he was writing Crying of Lot 49. Pynchon would ask his friend, do you believe in ESP? Strange things keep happening to me. He would tell his friend, you know the waste horn in the Crying of Lot 49? The symbol of the secret message service? Every weirdo in the world is on my wavelength. You can't understand the kind of letters I get. Someone wrote to me that the very same horn was the symbol of a private mail system in medieval times. I checked it out at the library. It's true, but I made it up myself before the book was ever published, before I ever got that letter. So an author experiencing a synchronicity on a synchronicity about synchronicities, it's like it's contagious. Nullius and Verba. So what can Oedipa do in the end? She'll talk with the still strangely named Mike Fallopian that confirms, quote, Fallopian watched her, nothing if not compassionate. You ought, quietly. Really, you ought to think about it. Write down what you can't deny. Your hard intelligence. But then write down what you've only speculated, assumed. See what you've got there. At least that. Go ahead, she said, cold. At least that. What else after that? He smiled, perhaps now trying to salvage whatever was going soundlessly smash, its net of invisible cracks propagating leisurely through the air between them. Please don't be mad. Verify my sources, I suppose, Oedipa kept on pleasantly. Right? He didn't say any more. Verify the sources. Nullius in verba. Keep digging and see it through to the end. Mystery loves a seeker. Like the Delphic mantra, know for thyself what weird calls you. If you like our work and want to support us, please go down to the links below in the description and consider joining our Patreon, where you can either just pitch us a few bucks a month or consider joining our Discord channel so that way you can hang out with us in real time and explore our philosophy and Shakespeare hunting questions. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next video.